Hello, everyone. Welcome to my series on Chinese medicine and Materia Medica. Now, if you're interested in the foundations of Chinese medicine, alchemy, botany, even like mineralogy, things like that, this series might be of interest to you. Also, if you're just generally interested in traditional Chinese medicine, this will be a place for you to get a start on that. So throughout the videos in this series, I'm going to be walking you through classical Chinese sources, classical Chinese medical treatises in the original language. We're going to be doing a very close reading like I've done in some of my other videos. Now, in the process, we're going to be learning about the language as well as some of the theories behind the practice of medicine as recorded in a variety of different works. We're going to be starting with a very early one today. The text is known in Chinese as the Shennong Bencao Jing. So the Shennong is the divine farmer from Chinese mythology. I'll probably end up doing a video on his story at some point here, but he's the guy who allegedly went around and tried a variety of different medicinal substances that he then determined whether they were poisonous, what benefits they might have had. So he gets a lot of credit for early practices of medicine as well as farming and a variety of other things. But this text really has nothing directly to do with him, but because of that tradition, he gets his name on it. But so anyway, Shennong Bencao. Bencao gets generally translated into English as Materia Medica, collection of a variety of different medicinal substances, and a brief description of them, maybe where you might be able to find them, what their uses might be, things like that. And then Jing is just a word used to denote a classic. It literally means the warp and the weft of a cloth, but then that composition kind of thought process ends up by extension coming to mean classic. But so, right, this text is, as far as I am aware of, the earliest Sinitic, so in classical Chinese, medical treatise, particularly Materia Medica. Now, we're not entirely sure of the compilation date, something like the Warring States period, so like maybe 400 BCE might be a rough estimate for you. The original text is actually no longer extant, but the version that we're going to be reading in these videos is actually the result of a compilation of a variety of different references to the text that has been reconstructed over the course of time. We're going to start with the preface of the book. The preface is going to give us a description of the actual structure of the text, as well as provide some basics of medicinal theory. We're going to flesh those out as we come into contact with other texts later on, but this is the early one. I want to start the series off early and then build up through time to get a better understanding of how medicine actually comes to be discussed. But okay, so the preface is divided roughly into 14 different sections. The first 5 sections, they provide like a general summary and explanation of 3 divisions of medicinal substances that are perceived to exist. We're going to walk through what those actually look like. And then the sections 6 through 9, they end up discussing connections between yin and yang, like different phases of qi, as well as the five flavors, the 7 emotions, all different kinds of numerological things that we'll have to encounter as we go and try to figure out what's being discussed. Now, the last collection of sections, sections 10 through 14, talk about diagnosis, the administration of medicines, how you actually want to consume the substances that we're talking about. But anyways, now that we have a basic understanding of the background structure of the text, I want us to jump into the text itself. So let me transition to that for us right here. Okay, so first off, I have the name of the text right here. So Shennong, these 2 characters here, this one literally means divine, and the second one means to farm or farmer. So these are Shennong. So he's the divine farmer. He's a pseudo mythological, perhaps maybe fully mythological person who gets credit for describing a variety of different substances, how they can or cannot be consumed, and what types of impacts they might have on the body. Now, these second 2 characters here, Bencao, they generally get translated. So Bencao they get translated as Materia Medica. So Materia Medica is, it's a word from Latin. It means a collection of a variety of different herbs, minerals, things that are consumed in order to have some sort of effect on the body, generally incorporated predominantly into medications. Okay, and then this last character here, Jing, this is the word that means like the warp or weft of cloth or a textile, but here it is by extension meaning a classical text, classic, something like that, or sometimes treatise, depending on who you want to refer to. Now, this last one after the colon is just denoting the section of the text. This is the xu, or the preface. Okay, so this collection of videos is going to predominantly focus on the preface of the text, gives you an idea of what to expect if you were to look into the rest of the text, which is more of a reference work. Maybe we can pull out some examples later on in the series. But suffice to say, today we're going to be working on the beginning of the preface and working through that. Okay, so the line underneath that, this first line being the title and the section of the work, Shennong Bencao Jing Xu. So the classic Materia Medica of Shennong. So in order to parse this, you could think of it, which I've talked about this in some of my other videos, that this is an attributive. We have Shennong as the name of the person. Okay. And then Bencao here, you can think of it as having in the middle there a zhi, which converts the name into an attributive. It's kind of like the possessive genitive kind of form in English, like an apostrophe S. So you can think of it as Shennong's, his, Bencao. And I won't fill that in here, but this goes over here into that afterwards. So you can think of it in terms of the grammar of the title. It's a classic. What type of classic? A Materia Medica. What type of Materia Medica classic? It is a Shennong Materia Medica classic. If that makes sense. Okay. Don't want to spend too much time on the title. Titles generally aren't that interesting. So let's get into the text itself. So this is the first line of the preface right here. We're going to first look for a topic and a comment. This is something that I try to talk about in every one of my videos, where you can divide up the classical Chinese language into a topic and a comment, meaning something that's being talked about and whatever is being said about that thing. So in the case of this, let's walk through each particular character and then we might find the topic. So this first character, shang, means above, right? This is a very common word that if you have any experience in Chinese, you'd be familiar with. And literally just means you see this thing above the flat line. It literally is a pictograph in a certain sense. It means above. Okay. Then right here, the second character, yao. That actually is medicine. Now, in the case of this text, I think it might be better to consider it as medicinal substance, because we have a variety of different components that some of them act by themselves, but others of them are going to be combined together into the actual medicine. These are more like the component parts of a medicine. Some are medicines themselves, others are going to be incorporated into a compound medicine. And we'll see this as you go, and maybe it'll make more sense as we read, but I tend to gloss this as medicinal substance rather than just pure medicine. Okay, then we have a bunch of numbers. So this is 1, this is 100, this is 2, and this is 10. Okay, so 1 is E, 100 is by, let's write the number 100. 2 is er. And then 10 is sh. Okay, so now the way that numbers work in Chinese is actually fairly simple. So for 100, the number of hundreds is going to come before it. So it's 100. What kind of 100? A 100, right? And that's the same as what I was showing you right here, where if we take the 100, you can think of it as having a zhi in front of it like that, describing the 1. Or describing the 100 using the 1. So we have how many hundreds? 100. Now you can have 200. You can have 300, etc. Simple as that. How many hundreds? 100. Similar for this next decimal value, we have a 10. How many tens? 2. So this gives us a complete number of how much? 100 and 2 tens, so 120. Okay, so these 4 characters come together to mean 120. Okay, then we have this one here. This character here is zhong. It means type or variety, something like that. So it's a noun. These are all nouns. The numbers are all nouns. Yao, the medicine, is a noun as well. And shang, we'll come back to. All right, we'll figure out what that means after we know what all the characters are. But we're seeing a lot of nouns here. At some point, we need to see a verb, unless we resign ourselves to considering this a nominal sentence, which they do exist where you literally have no verb in classical Chinese. But in this case, we see coming after zhong, this character here, wei, almost always is a verb. Generally speaking, it's a verb. It can mean a variety of different things. It can mean for the sake of. It can mean to be taken as. Things like that. In the case of this one, we'll figure it out as we read. Then after that, to finish off this first section before the comma, we have right here, Jun. So Jun is Lord or ruler. Oops, made a little bit of a mistake there. Ruler. Okay, so that, a ruler, a lord, is a noun. Okay, so we have lots and lots of nouns. Let's start with zhong. This is fairly easy to resolve. If you have a noun and it's preceded by numbers, one way to resolve it, which I think generally applies in this case, is that the noun with a number preceding it is telling you how many of that noun. In this case, we have type. Makes a lot of sense for it to tell us how many varieties there are. So in this case, how many varieties are there? There are 120 varieties. Okay, 120 varieties of what? Well, we have medicine over here and we have lord over here. Okay, so this sentence actually is fairly complex in its structure, where we have a topic, medicine, and a comment telling us how many of the medicine coming up after that. So we can actually take this first section as being a topic with a medicine, actually a type of medicine, and above medicine. How do we think of above in terms of a noun like medicine? Something like superior. So in this case, we have, and as we see, we're going to see medicines divided into 3 different categories as we read. There's going to be an above, there's going to be a middle, and there's going to be a below. So rather than thinking of it in the pure locative sense, we're going to extend that idea to ranking them. So superior, middling or average, and then inferior. Okay, so that's how I would read it, at least. You can disagree, but I think that works fairly well for what we're seeing. So we have medicines. What type of medicines? Same kind of structure. 上之药, superior medicines. Of superior medicines, there are 120 types. Okay, but then it keeps going. So not only do we have a topic comment kind of nominal structure here in the beginning where we have two nouns. We have one noun, superior medicine, followed by another noun, 120 types. We continue with a verb. So we have to think about reorganizing our English grammar in order to make sense of this. So to be taken as, or for the sake of, lord or ruler. Now, as we read, we're going to see that there's going to be a parallel structure. That knowing that will help us a lot. I'm going to kind of give a preview of that here by telling you that we'll see that each of the categories, the superior, the middling, and the inferior, are also going to be associated with a kind of parallel societal metaphor. In this case, the societal metaphor is Lord. Why? Because the ruler is on top. The ruler is superior, at least in the society in which this is being constructed, this is being written down. So rather than for the sake of, I would read this way, which requires context for us to really understand. I would read it as to be taken as. So the 120 types of superior medicines, apologies, the 120 types of superior medicines are taken to be lordly or of the ruler category. Now, in terms of what that actually means, in terms of any kind of real connotation, we'll have to wait and see. Maybe it won't have any real meaning, and maybe it's just them talking. But in the case of the grammar, that's what we have. We have the superior medicines, of which there are 120, are taken to be lordly. Okay. So the first section, the topic would be superior medicines, of which there are 120, comment, are taken to be lordly. So we have two different topic comments. You'll notice that when I made sense of the numbers, there was a topic and a comment. Then we have a second topic and comment right here. So this is like topic comment 1. And then we have another topic 2 and comment 2. Okay. Now, with classical Chinese sentences, you can have complex building onto a single topic. You could have multiple different comments. So the first comment of this topic 2 is actually this one, but then we have to figure out what the topic of this one is as well, this section over here, and we're going to find out that actually they're still talking about the medicine. So let's see why I think that. So over here, let's understand what these different characters are. I'm going to draw a big line here so that we can distinguish our two different terms here, two different sets of terms. So I'm going to be going again right across the line here. The first one, 主, that can mean to rule, but in this case, I think it means something more like predominantly. And this is a problem with Chinese in particular classical Chinese. You can have many different meanings from a single word. We'll understand why I think it's predominantly here in a little bit. Then we have yang. The second character is yang, which means something like to raise or to nourish. Oops. To nourish. Okay. Then the third character, Ming, life. The fourth character, Yi. This is a grammar point, so we're going to come back to that one. But I'll put in parentheses grammar here. It doesn't, it can mean things like to use, to be taken as, a whole variety of different meanings. We'll have to make sense of that as we read. Then the next character, the fifth one there, 应. To respond is the most common usage of it, but that actually is an extension of the general meaning, which is to reflect. So you can kind of understand how respond can come from reflect. You're reflecting back onto someone who's talking to you or something like that. And then the last character, 天, that means heaven or sky. I'll put heaven with a capital H because it's generally that kind of heaven, a divine heaven, but also sky. Now again, looking forward to what we're going to read, we have a parallel structure. There's actually a set of 3 ideas that come together, just as we have top, middle, and bottom for the types of medicines. For the lords, we also have ministers and assistants. And then for heaven, we actually have people and earth. These are all very common sets of 3 that we're going to see here. And so in this particular case, we have an extension of this description of the superior medicine. The superior medicines, there's 120 types. They're taken to be lordly. And now we have another comment which says, so if we look at heaven and we think of this as being a verb, this as being a noun, we take the heaven as being the object of the verb to respond to heaven or to reflect heaven, something like that. Now, over here, we have life, which is a noun, and then we have to nourish or to raise. We have this noun acting as an object to that verb, to nourish life. That can mean something like to extend life, something like that. It's a very common compound. Yang can be to raise a thing, like an animal or a person, or it can be to nourish a certain aspect of a thing. In this case, something's life. Okay. Now, we have 主. This is also a verb. And this here is also a verb, yi. So we have lots of verbs on this side. We had lots of nouns over on the left side. On the right side, we have lots of verbs. So what are these other verbs doing? This verb up here is actually, it can mean to rule. It can mean by extension the noun ruler. I think it means predominantly because since we have 2 verbs beside each other, 2 verbs can mean 2 different things, commonly, I should say. One is verb 1 are, verb 2. And what that means is verb 1 and then verb 2. We call this coordination, where you're telling a progress of things. Whereas I think this is actually a different structure where 2 verbs beside each other turn into something like adverb, verb, or helping verb, verb. So meaning that we're learning something about the second verb by looking at the first verb. So the first verb is describing something about the second verb. So in this case, it's nourishing life, but it's not just nourishing life. It's predominantly, it's generally used for nourishing life. Now, then this next part, yi, to use is generally the most common usage of this. So we're using something. The structure usually looks like, it looks like oops, let me fix that. To use something to do something. Now you can also have another noun here. So we use a noun to then do an action, verb, potentially on something. Now in this case, you'll notice though that the E is followed by a verb. And what that tells us actually is that we can rewrite this whole line as E zhi. So this is an undefined noun. And then we have a verb, which is ying. Oops, forgot a little line in there. Ying, tian. So this was our verb, this is our noun, this is our verb. So we are using something to respond to heaven. Now, this is usually reflexive. It's if you get rid of a noun, the author is assuming that the reader knows the noun that's being omitted. And so we have a bunch of different nouns that we can choose from. We can choose from medicine, we can choose from type, we can choose Lord, life, or I wouldn't say heaven because we haven't seen heaven until after E, so I wouldn't assume that this could be in that selection. But so what are we talking about? What's the topic of this whole collection of sentences, or this whole collection of statements? The medicine. So the medicine, what type of medicine? The shang, the superior medicine, is responding to heaven. And we'll see a parallel structure as we go, that the superior medicine reflects heaven, the middling medicine reflects people, and the lower medicine, the inferior medicine, reflects earth. But anyways, this is a very common structure that you'll become familiar with as you watch many of my videos. You'll see it over and over and over again, and it'll become second nature after seeing it a lot. But really becoming familiar with the language is just looking at it, walking through it slowly, getting a lot of examples, and eventually it'll all start to make sense. So what does this all mean together? It is predominantly used to, or you can say, I think we shouldn't say use yet. We should just say predominantly it nourishes life and is used to respond to heaven, or is used as a way of reflecting heaven, something along those lines. So this whole section, actually, you might consider it as being a complex comment. So like a 2-1, or I shouldn't say 1, I should say 2-2, because we had topic 2 was this whole thing, the 120 types of medicine. So this should be 2-1 over here. And then this one over here should be 2-2, because this is also talking about the 120 types of superior medicines. Okay, but even within that, you could basically divide this into two separate statements again. The first statement being predominantly nourishing life, the second one being used to reflect heaven. Okay, I know that's a lot to take in. I encourage you, if you didn't follow, look through it again, walk through it, mark off each different thing yourself, and try to make sense of how they all connect. Okay, now we're going to continue down. Right. So I want to finish this whole big first statement about superior medicine. So remember, we're still talking about, oh, that was very poor writing of that character. Let me try that again. Shang Yao. We're still talking about the superior medicines, right? ... This is our general topic, of which there's 120. So I'll put a little 120 here as well, so we remember. Okay, so this is still our topic, and we still have a bunch of commentary about that topic. Wow, lots and lots of different things to say. The first thing here, I would say that this is a good place for us to draw our line, and you'll see why as we go. The first character, wu, it's a verb to be without. This is complementary to another character, to have or to exist, pronounced yo. which you might have seen elsewhere. Very common word even today in modern Mandarin. But wu is the opposite of that, to be without or to not exist. Then the second character here is du, which is poison, or abstracted to toxicity. Okay, and so if you put the wu in front of it, so this is actually a nominal negation. So this is a noun. This is poison, toxicity, a noun. And this negates that noun. So it's saying to be without poison, without poison. So it's saying that these superior medicines are what? They're non-toxic. That's basically what it's saying here. And then it actually completes this thought with more discussion of the superior medicines, but from the perspective of elaborating on without toxicity. It says, let's see, first character is 多, to be a lot or many. In this case, it can be a verb or an adjective, which adjectives are generally stative verbs in classical Chinese. But so we'll put verb here for now. Fu, this next one, is to consume, particularly from the perspective of medicines. Okay. This is even used today. It's still the general verb for taking medicine. Sometimes they say 吃, which means to eat, but 服 is the more standard professional term as opposed to eat. But this is a verb, to consume. Then we have 久. The next one is a long time as a noun, or it can also be a verb for a long time. Then we have fu again, which is just here. So we have that again, right there. Then after that, we have bu, which is a verbal negation. Takes a verb and gives you the opposite of it. Okay, put that in parentheses because it's a grammar point. Then we have, over here, we have shang, which is to harm. And we know it's a verb because it's preceded by the verbal negation, to harm. And then the last one, so verb, this one is a noun, which means people, 人, or humans, people, humans, whichever you want to put. Okay, so we have the full verb here, we have the negation of that verb there, and then 久. In this case, I would call it a verb, but in parentheses, I would say adverb. So there's not a comma here, but I would put a comma. Why? We have, and I would also put an adverb over this one as well, because it's telling us something about the verb. And I think that these two sets of verbs are connected like this. And I think it'll make sense once I explain it. We have to consume. How are we consuming? Many, many times. And then we have to consume. How are we consuming? For a long time. So I think that these are just two potential descriptions of taking the shang yao, the superior medicines. The first one is to consume it many times. The second one is to consume it for a long time. And we can think of that as another subtopic, of which there is a comment, verbal negation, to harm, meaning to not harm. And then as an object of that harm verb, harm what? Harm people. So how do we make sense of that? Superior medicines are without toxicity, consuming them many times, consuming them for a long time. In either of those situations, it is not harmful to people, or it literally does not harm people. So many times taking, long time taking, not harm people, right? And so this is one of the great, I feel like, kind of elegant things about classical Chinese is that you can say all of these things in a very simple way like this. It gives you a situation, or in this case, even two situations, and then explains what we care about those two situations, right? Which is that if you're taking a superior medicine for a long time or many times, it doesn't matter, it's not going to hurt you. Okay, cool. All right, then we get to the last section here, which is going to tell us who should be looking where. I'm going to start with where. All the way here at the end, you'll see that the person who edited this form of the text put these in brackets. These type of double brackets like this tell you that whatever's inside of them is a title of some text, usually a book, right? So in this case, Shang Jing, we already saw Jing. This one here was classic from the title of the text, the Shennong Bencao Jing, right? And then we already know this one as upper, above, superior, something like that. In this case, I might call it first, because we're going to see that the rest of the text after the preface is actually divided into three main chunks, three chapters, if you will, three sections. And this is pointing us to the first section, the upper section, which it just happens to also be about the upper or superior medicines. Okay, now bun means fundamentally root. But I think that if we want to, I'll put a little ... over here. I think that bun, this first one, is actually not root, but source. So meaning the source, comma, top classic, first classic. Okay, so what is it the source of? Let's see. What is this whole big section here talking about? The first one, this is a verb, yu, to want, to desire. Okay? The second one, second character, is qing, which is to be light in weight. To be light, weight. Okay, so that's a stative verb, but we're going to see something very interesting in that it's taking an object. So I'm going to call this a verb. It's actually taking an object, even though it's a stative verb. That object, shen, is body. So to understand how a stative verb can take an object, you turn it into a method by which the object becomes like the stative verb. So in this case, to be light becomes to lighten in terms of weight, to lighten the body. Okay, so these are actually connected. Then we have yi, to benefit. Then it's a verb, to benefit. Qi, this is a noun. Qi, this is the qi that's like energy. Sometimes you see it as chi. It's some kind of abstract energy that we'll see lots and lots coming through here. But suffice to say, we'll just call it qi because it's a complex medicinal topic. It's a complex medicinal term. It's a kind of a jargon in a certain sense. All things are composed of qi. Qi circulates. There's different phases of qi. We'll get into that as we get to the actual theory of all this stuff as we read. But for now, we'll just call it qi. We're benefiting qi, whatever that means. Then we have our verbal negation, which means that this has to be a verb, which is interesting, sort of. Lao is to be old. Okay. But it can also mean to age in this case, because it's we're going to see that this is an action. It's actually a progressive type of action. Then we have another verb, to extend. This is yen, to extend. Then here we have a noun, nian, year. And then over here we have a grammar. This guy right here is zhe. I'll put in parentheses nominalizer. It makes things into a noun, but oftentimes we translate it as one who or one which does something. dot dot dot. Okay, we'll explain that as we connect all these different characters. But okay, so we already got to lighten the body. Here we have to benefit qi, another verb object kind of situation here. Then we have to not age. And here we have to extend years. So it's a bunch of collections of two. You can see a division here, division here, division here. And this is a very common situation that you'll encounter in classical Chinese where you have many different ideas presented in a row. We already saw that with the Dofu Jofu over here, the many times taking, long time taking. In this case, it's at the beginning, yu, to desire to or to want to each of these four things, and then this zhe, one who what? One who all of these things in front of us, because we're looking for a verb. Sometimes the nominalizer gets attached to a noun to emphasize the noun. But in this case, it makes the most sense to take it all together as one who does what? One who desires to lighten the body, benefit qi, not age, extend years in terms of extending the years of one's life. And if you remember to the previous section that we were talking about earlier in the video, we remember that the medicine was predominantly for nourishing life. Kind of all is coming together into a statement. But okay, so this is another topic. This is another topic here. For one who desires to do all these things, the source is the Shang Jing, the first classic. So if you want to figure out how to do all of these different things, lighten your body, benefit qi, not age, extend your years, you should go to the first one. Okay, so I know that's a lot to take in. I purely believe, or I truly believe that in order to master the language, you just have to do more. You have to look at the text more, you have to read more texts, and by piecing it all together, you'll start to develop patterns, which will then allow you to extend those patterns and apply them elsewhere. For me, I look at this, I see problems, and I have to solve them by using my context. And I'm walking you through my process here with the hope that you can then take those tools and apply them in your own reading, or maybe in some of the other readings that I work through with you. Okay, so thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, I'm going to continue on with this text as well as the other ones that I've already started as I work through building the channel. If you liked it, give me a like. If you want to come back, I would love to see you subscribe so you get a notification when I post new videos. But other than that, I had a great time doing this and hope to see you in the next one. So thank you.